Hello and welcome to this Artrix special. I'm Lucas Alexander. Just say the Queen of Rock, the first woman in the history of rock music, and everyone around the world will know exactly who we're talking about. Tina Turner began her incredible career in 1958, and she's been performing live and making hit songs for 60 years. In 2018, a brand new musical will open in the West End in London, and she will also publish a new installment of her autobiography. But there is one person, who has known and worked for Tina Turner for most of her life. Rhonda Graham began as a tour manager for the Ike and Tina Turner Revue in the early 1960s, and she's been Tina Turner's personal assistant ever since. I sat down to speak to Rhonda Graham at the Tina Turner Museum at the West Tennessee Delta Heritage Center in Brownsville near Nutbush, Tennessee, about a long life with one of the world's most remarkable and exciting performers. You were born and raised where?
I was in Indianapolis till I was about 7, I think, and then we moved to California. So that's California's home, and basically raised there.
Right.
But I used to go, when I was in high school, go to some clubs. It was in really nice clubs in LA. One of them, Bob Eubanks owned, called the Cinnamon Cinder.
Right.
And it was like an adult nightclub, only there was no liquor. The girls had to wear dresses or skirts. There was no slacks allowed, no pants. The guys had to wear jackets. It was a really nice club. And Ike and Tina were performing there, and then I just started following them around and way into Watts and wherever they were playing, and then we just got to be friends, and the rest is history, as they say.
The rest is history, and there's a lot of history there.
Well, yes.
What year was that?
That was 1964.
1964. You must have been a very, very young girl at that time, suddenly getting into all of this.
Yeah, because it was totally new for me. I'd never been around anything like that, but it's just, they were just so dynamic on stage.
We don't have too much footage of Tina from the
early
days, so it's difficult for fans and people who know her how she is today,
right?
And some of the later Ike and Tina stuff, which is recorded,
right,
to actually know how her performances and how she was.
It was always a dynamic, very energetic performance. She's always been a visual act, and I mean, even in the early days after hit "Fool in Love," when there was no hit record, it was still visual and still packed houses because she was so much the whole show. I mean, it was the Ikettes, it was the big band, and Tina. I mean, it was just a very energetic, high-performance show that everybody enjoyed watching. I mean, even if they weren't a fan or anything, if they happened to be in the club at the night that we were performing, they enjoyed the show because it was kind of an unusual show in a sense.
Yes. Because
of so many people on stage and, so much. There's always something to look at. The band had their own little routines going on. The Ikettes had their routines. Tina was doing her thing. Yeah. So it was quite a show.
Spotlight is on me, y'all. I'm having a ball, y'all. Sing with soul, y'all. Yeah, oh yeah.
How much do you think that Tina progressed over the years? I mean, that was the very early days.
Right.
And from what I've seen, she was wearing longer skirts and was kind of...
mini skirts weren't in then. That was a big thing. You wore the long gowns. It was to the ground, and to the floor and that type of... There was dresses, too, she was wearing, but they were like below the knee. I mean, that was the era.
Yeah.
And it was
always
very
that
professional.
More sexy look.
Well, it was still kind of a sexy look. I mean, the cut of the dresses, and that's when the rag dresses came in with it, the stream, kind of a streamer type thing. Some were beaded, some weren't. Yeah. And it was always a very classy look as far as the routine, as the Revue was. The band was all in suits. suits and ties, and the Ikettes had, they had their own costumes. Some of them were long gowns too, depending upon what Tina was wearing at the time.
Yeah.
And
so when did you start working for them? I mean, you started
November
as a
of
fan.
'64.
November already.
Yeah.
Very shortly after you met
Yes.
them already. Wow.
Yeah.
And you became the tour manager for Ike and Tina for years, didn't you?
Jack of all trades, more or less. Booked the show, did all the travel arrangements as far as if we happened to be flying, which was later on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had our own little van with it for the instruments, and then they had a car, and then we had a bus, a tour bus. And booked the show, clocked the door, did whatever had to be done, really. Did all the contracts and made sure.
So you were more doing that than Ike was doing it, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all kind of fell into my lap. So it was a tour manager type thing and booking agency, because Ike had his own booking agency, so we booked the act ourselves.
So you had that assertive and direct way, which was very good for their show, right?
Yeah, and it was like a learning curve, because when you're booking a show like that, or any show, there's certain towns you can play on certain days as far as drawing, like a full house. I mean, there's other towns that, for instance, you may go to say Nashville, Tennessee, and they may not, if you play there on a Wednesday, you may not get anybody. It's just the routine of the town, and when they go out on certain nights or whatever, even if it's a big act. Nowadays it's a different thing, because you've got huge acts that play these big arenas and everything, which Tina's also did in the latter years.
Yeah.
But you just had to know how to book the tour as far as this is the best day to play this city, this is the best play to that city, and you have to think you're driving, so your mileage is also crucial as far as how far you can travel from one show
Place
to
to
the
the
next.
other.
Yeah.
And
we
from what we've heard, Ike was really pushing it hard and working so many days.
Oh,
of the
we
year,
worked around the year.
all over.
Total year. Yeah, we'd work 3 months on the road. We'd come home, we'd work in LA for 3 months, and we'd go back on the road for 3 months. So it was a consistent routine. There
So when
wasn't a time.
did they record their albums? That must have been during
In
the time
between,
off.
and sometimes it was recorded on the road.
Ah.
Like
With equipment, or you went to studio?
well, in a studio.
In studio.
Yeah. So it depends on where we were, what they were ready to record, and what the record company was saying, if they needed something or whatever.
From what we've heard, it was very important that you were actually a white woman who opened doors for Ike and Tina, who were part of the Chitlin Circuit.
Chitlin.
Yeah, at that time it was very segregated,
Yes.
and that it was very important, but also very unusual, because you were a woman, and at that time it was different, huh?
It was very
Women,
different.
and also a black group.
A black group being a white woman being a road manager. I mean, the first tour run through, basically, a black promoter didn't want a white woman telling them, what they used to do. I had a clock which you would click it every time someone comes through the door,
Yeah.
because when you start, you get a guarantee for the show. You have a roll of tickets. You take the first number. When the show's over with, then you take the last number, and that's the amount of tickets that's sold, and then you can get a percentage of that if enough tickets are sold. So what the promoters would do, they'd have their guy on the door next to me collecting the tickets. Then he would turn around, hand the tickets to somebody. They'd take them back to the ticket booth and resell the same tickets. So Ike and Tina weren't getting paid on these tickets that was sold twice. So that's why I used to clock the door. So then, then I'd have fights with the promoters and what have you. And I said, this is the clock. This is how many people come in. You reran some tickets. So once we went through that, I went through that with all the promoters. Then they kind of understood, and I think actually that I gained a bit of respect, because they knew that I wasn't going to stand for tickets being rerun and things not being right.
So you were a strong woman. At
Yeah,
an early time.
and it was dangerous, because like you say, the segregation, when we got in the South, I had to rent a car and drive myself.
Really?
Yeah, and we had, at the time, the guitar player was a white guy, Herb Sadler, and him and I would drive together. And if in the black part of town, it was fine. It was in the white part of town that we had a problem.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, we got run off the road with, the guys in the pickup trucks with a shotgun across the back window of the truck and things like
With
that.
white people doing that?
Yes,
Wow.
in the South. So it was, it was a blazing trail, so to speak.
Wow, that's amazing. How did you cope with all of this? Must be so unusual from what you.
Well, it was unusual,
grew up.
but I was also very young, so there was nothing. I don't want to say habits, but no job like that I had done that was a matter of changing the system, the way it worked or anything. I mean, I learned as I went along, and of course Ike, taught me a lot of things as far as you do this, that, and I had to be the buffer between the promoters and him, rather, if they wanted him to do something, I had to be the one to say no, or, we can't do that, or this or that or the other.
So you made a lot of decisions there.
Yeah, and some of them he made the decision, but it had to look to the promoter like it was coming from me, rather than make them look like the bad guy.
So did Ike respect you and your job? I mean, you've spoken about a lot of things in documentaries before, actually, quite openly. Yeah. But did he do that, or was he very controlling to you as well?
He was controlling to everybody. I'm not going to go into all of that. That's a whole negative side.
We've heard a lot about that.
Yeah, that's old history. But
also,
it was a rough time. And
you coped fine with it, or you could live with it?
Well, you just coped. You did, and I was concerned for her too. So I kind of wanted to stay by her.
Yeah.
To make sure everything was
okay. And you
okay.
became the closest to Tina also at that time, or? I mean, you were the only one, basically, one of the very few ones that actually stayed with Tina. Well, after, and she was, she really, and you continued to do everything and became her very close personal assistant, of course, and done everything like that. But I mean, there must have been a special bond that developed at that time between the two of you.
Yeah, it was more like family. I mean, her mother used to call me her other daughter. I mean, we were that close. It was and still is. It's a family situation.
How about your own family? You have family yourself?
No, well, that's the sad thing. I mean, it's, when you're on the road that much, you don't really have that time for a long-lasting relationship. So you kind of sacrificed a little bit also. A little bit, but I enjoyed, the traveling and doing what I was doing too. So, and we shared her kids in a sense, so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was either more like a rent-a-kid for me. When it got time, it's okay. You can go home now.
Yeah.
But
so you were a little bit like a governess or something for the children.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
There was a lady called Anne Kane.
Anne Kane, yes.
Who was
Anne Kane was a housekeeper.
Yeah.
And then Anne Kane was very smart.
Yeah, I heard.
And so she was really good with the boys. With training, Tina had 4 sons. With training them, making sure they got their schoolwork done and just strict with them, which is good. Kids need a strong foundation. Yeah, but I mean, she was on the road all the time when you think about it, so.
And they never came along so much, or was it?
Not in those days, you wouldn't. And the kids were too young to be doing that anyway. They were in school.
Yeah, I asked already if you were a tough negotiator.
Well, you had a contract, and that's what you agreed to, and that's what you had to produce. There was dressing rooms, and we always got paid at halftime because at intermission, because promoters could run off and have, at different times with the money. So that's how you set the contract up. You got a deposit up front. Then at intermission, then you'd go collect the rest of the money. If they didn't have the money, you didn't go back on stage.
Well, after the comeback and Tina did the major tours,
right.
You were also involved, but was that more as a personal assistant helping her out backstage and getting everything?
Yeah, we got a whole big, tour group. You had a guy that did logistics, and you had bus drivers and, soundmen. It was a total different thing. I mean, in the early days, I've done everything from run the sound, run the spotlights, and drove the truck. Yeah.
You've really seen music history in that way, haven't you?
Yes, and I think that's the best way. You've got a strong foundation.
Yeah.
And you know what can be done and what should be done. Where now, I mean, I think the last tour, I forget now, was 113 people or something like that, sometimes more than that. They had 13 semis.
Anniversary tour.
Yeah, 13 semis and like 11 buses, to carry, because you're basically self-contained. You could do a show in a parking lot. You've got your own sound, you've got your own lights, you have your own staging. Everything for the dressing rooms and everything, so it's a total different ballgame.
Yeah, just everything changed.
Right. Right.
And you must have met a lot of amazing and interesting people during all of those, all of the traveling. Is there anybody that stand out that you can mention that was a fun story with somebody you met, with Ike and Tina, with those legends in those days that we don't have people like that anymore, right?
That's true. I mean, Oprah always stands out because she's such an amazing woman, has accomplished so much, like Tina, coming from nothing and accomplished what she has, and so intelligent. And just a lot of acts that we worked with, in those days, the Temptations and the Four Tops and Little Anthony Imperials and all of that. And, it was just it was a fun thing, and it kind of a lot of time, well, it still can happen today too, your tour would be following somebody else. So sometimes you may just miss them, or you may catch them when they're on their way out of town, you're on their way into town.
Yeah.
And what have you. And Ray Charles, he was another one that was an amazing man.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I mean, he engineered a session on Tina, actually in the control room himself. He had his own studio in L.A.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
So she recorded with him, or?
No, he was engineering the station.
He was an engineer.
Billy Preston was playing the harpsichord, and Tina was doing the vocals. And it's called Dust My Broom.
Yeah.
And there was another one. Yeah, Ray did the engineering. I mean, you know, sitting at the sound console.
And he wasn't credited?
Oh, I'm sure he was, but I mean, it was just the fact that he was blind, and that amazing to be able to do that.
Yeah, incredible.
But they develop a different, you know, a whole extra sense. I mean, I remember he called once at the studio, and at that point I'd only met him once, and he knew who I was. I said, "Oh, Rhonda, how are you?" You know, I'm like, well, how could you? You know, I just said hello, but their other senses are so sharp to make up for the fact that they don't have vision.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And it's
really?
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that because my grandmother was totally blind.
She was, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't
You
tell
must
day or
experience
night.
the world in a completely different way.
Yeah, and it's all by feel. You know, you come up and they'll feel your face and everything to see what you look like, and their sound is just, their hearing is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a total different thing.
There are some famous pictures with Tina and Janis Joplin
Yes.
on the stage at the Rolling Stones concert
Right.
at Madison Square Garden.
Some of those I took, I think.
Ye-
Janis had on the big white fur hat, looked like a lampshade.
That's it.
Yeah.
How is that? But, well, please, I was going to ask you if you were there on that
Well, yeah,
day.
Janet, we used to play a club called Basin Street in San Francisco. Very nice club. And Janice used to come there. And Janice performed there too at times, but she always came when we were there. I mean, if we were there for a week usually, and she'd come like every night. And then we were in New York, and I forget, I think we were playing Madison Square Gardens or something, and she got up on stage, and Bill Graham was the promoter, and then there was we had, I think, like a Thanksgiving dinner with Bill, and there was some shots we took too that wasn't, you know, that was wherever we were. I don't remember where we were at the time, but it wasn't at the Gardens. I mean, it was somewhere else where we were during the day before that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Janice was incredible.
So they met on several occasions or what?
Well, there, yeah, and then in New York, and then, you know, every time we played San Francisco, which we used to play quite a bit for Bill Graham, he had the Fillmore West there, and then he had the Fillmore East in New York, which was a big venue.
So is there any other private pictures of Tina and Janis, do you think, that they exist? Or
Not that I know of. I mean, there was nobody
you
there
could
but
have
us.
taken them? Yeah.
So
You took a lot of the pictures, right?
Yes,
That we
yeah.
know actually today also.
Yeah,
And
true.
Bob Gruen also did a
yeah,
lot.
Bob was on tour with us as a photographer for it was a few months. Yeah.
How do you feel about that? He released a documentary
Right,
a couple of years
and he had an
ago.
exhibition in L.A. with a lot of his photographs. He's an excellent photographer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think of the movie? I think there's a couple of moments with you, maybe even on it.
Yeah, to be honest, I ordered it. I had forgotten. Thank you for reminding me. I had forgot I'd ordered it, and it was out of stock.
So you haven't seen it?
No, so I haven't seen it yet.
Wow, we've
So
all seen it. We thought it was very interesting because it gives a whole different view.
View,
into-
yeah. Well, it's a backstage view.
Yeah, it is.
Basically,
It's
yeah.
very interesting. And also a lot of onstage thing because he obviously.
Well,
has
yeah,
the
but I mean,
equipment
it's
and
it gives you an insight to what goes on backstage
Yeah.
and that kind of thing.
And you know, the Tina house has just been sold. And
It was on the market. I don't know if it's sold. It was on
Yeah.
the market when I heard last week. I don't know.
And it's kept the way that they.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's amazing, though.
Yeah.
It's like a time capsule.
Yeah, well, Ike did the decorating on that, and it was
Ike,
all his
yeah.
ideas.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And Tina wasn't
And they
happy about it, she said in the
Well,
book.
it was a little garish, you know, and Tina was always very classy, not like what we call the local look or, you know,
No.
sexy.
Tina
on stage.
appears to me to be very, very different from the world that she came from. She appears to be more, classy,
Definitely.
actually more white. Not that she's not black
Yeah,
and all
right.
of that, but it's like it's more British kind of way. I don't know.
Yeah, more European.
More
Yeah.
European.
Yeah.
Was she always like that, even in the
Yes.
past?
Yeah. Well, when she was young, in fact, when she lived in Ripley, Tennessee, she worked for a lady, actually a white lady, Miss Connie. And Tina said that's where she learned a lot of things from her, because Tina's like a sponge. She absorbs what's around her, you know, and something can be learned. And she was always like that. I mean, always dressed very classy, not even like in the movies. Some of the things that they had Angela Bassett in was trendy at the time, but Tina never wore things like that. You know, she was always a very classy dresser, spoke very kindly, well, not, you know, didn't drink, wasn't a bad language or anything like that. It was, totally
exactly.
Yeah.
And that was, of course, not the environment she was in. It was the opposite.
Right.
She was the opposite of everything
Right.
she was in, and
Right.
really had to change her life. But you were never like that. You were also in that environment. Was that the reason why you got along so well, because you could relate to each other?
Who? Me and Tina?
You and Tina, yeah, because you were more the same. In
Yes.
a way, or,
Yes. True.
Yeah, on the same wavelength.
Right.
Was there anybody else that were close to her at that time?
Robbie Montgomery, Miss Robbie now
Yeah.
of the restaurant chain Sweetie Pies in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Yeah, Robbie. was-
During that was the '60s. She was an iPad,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
For how long did you work with Ike and Tina Turner? And maybe you have a fun story from the road to tell?
I got lots of fun stories. We don't have time. But I was one of the originals. I was on the first record, Fool in Love. I remember the day another guy was supposed to sing Believe, and he didn't show up. And Ann, as we call her, Ann, Tina, as you know, she said, I know the lyrics, the lead, and she sang Believe. And it was a hit. And so Ike offered me a job. I'll never forget, he said, as long as he's got a job, I've got one. And I ran upstairs. I had a baby that was like 3 or 4 months. And I ran upstairs and asked my mom, Mom, if you keep my baby for me so I can go on the road, I'll pay your rent. And the rent wasn't but $100. But back then, there was a lot of money. And she agreed to let me go. And we went on the road with her. I mean, everything was segregated back in those days. So we traveled by bus. Excuse me. And there were limited hotels that we could go to. There was James Brown Revue, Bobby Blair Revue, and Ike and Tina Turner's Revue. Those were all the reviews. And if they were in the hotel, we would wait on the bus until they checked out and the maids cleaned the rooms, and then we'll check in. Same thing, somebody came behind us. So that taught me to live away from home with the family. There was about 20 of us. And we shared everything. Everybody was cordial to each other, kind of looked out for each other. So that was my family away from home. Tina was like a sister to me, as I said before. And it was just a wonderful time in my life. And we got paid every week. They don't do that too much anymore.
Sure don't.
Every Sunday night. I think Rhonda was a Sunday. Where's Rhonda? She knows. She made the checks out. Okay, did we get paid every Sunday night? Okay. Right. Yeah, you could draw. See, you could draw. You could borrow money. And then you paid back in those days. They don't do that too much. It's like
They didn't fuck me
layaway.
about I didn't draw this much, I drew this much.
Right. It was something that we look forward to. One thing about that, we always got paid on Sunday night. Some people had drawn up, borrowed all their money by the time, but that taught me I learned a lot of things from being on the road. We called it the Turner University. I mean, he had strict rules, but later on in my life, I applied it to my business. Everybody thought he was mean, but now that I've got a business, I understand exactly where he was coming from.
But they changed a lot, it seems, those iKits. There were new sets all the
Well,
time.
the new sets, yeah. I mean, there was quite a few sets after Robbie left. But you know, life goes on. People have, you know, especially girls have babies and all that stuff, and you got to replace them, or they're tired of traveling or what have you.
So in later years, when Tina has been kind of retired, what have you been doing? Have you been working with somebody else? Have you done other kinds of jobs?
No,
at
I
any
still do
time?
a few things for Tina, but you know, like you say, she's retired, so there's not a lot going on. And then, of course, we did the Flag Grove School in Tennessee, which was like a 2-year project before we even got the doors open.
And was Tina very involved in doing that with you?
Yeah, she supported it,
interested in it?
yeah, and financially she backed it a lot, and you know, all of her costumes are there, and no, she was very thrilled to do that and happy to do something for Brownsville and wanted to bring, you know, revenue into Brownsville, which is what it's done.
Why not do a Tina museum in Europe as well?
This is where she was born. This is where she's from. You know, it's her hometown. So yeah.
Would she ever come and see it? here?
Possibly.
Possibly
Yeah.
with you one day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see. You know, she can't fly long distances now, so you know.
Why can't you fly long?
Well, it's just, you know, it's the doctor advises against it, you know, with the altitude and the distance of the flight and all
People
that.
said she had a kind of a little problem. Is she over that now?
Yeah, she's fine. She just, you know, she can't fly. Like I said, she can't fly.
Mm-hmm.
It's from Europe, you know, you're looking, well, you know, you're looking 11 and a half, depending upon where you're coming, 11 and a half, 12-hour flight.
Yeah, that was 10 hours from Denmark.
Yeah.
Do you have any memories of Denmark? Or was this just
Copenhagen.
yeah.
On the walking street, there used to be some big department store. I don't remember the name of it. But as soon as you walked in, there was an ice cream machine on the right, and that is the best ice cream I have ever had. It tasted like marshmallows. It's better than the one that everybody talks about in Paris.
Really?
Yeah, there's some very well-known ice cream shop in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't hold a candle to the one in Copenhagen. It's probably not even there.
Magazine, it might have been. It's like the top department store.
Could have been, but there was like storm doors. Well, it gets cold and snows in Copenhagen, so you had first set of doors. You'd go through that, then you'd big wide doors, and you go through the second set, and it was right there on the right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking
There
years
are
ago.
stories I remember hearing from the early 70s when Argentina came there, and you probably booked it.
Yeah,
that,
and was there.
You were there, and where was it? Jehovah's Witnesses were protesting outside of the venue because they thought that Tina was so vulgar and sexy, and she was promoting sex with I've been
I don't remember that.
all that. That was kind of it's like a myth now, a little bit of an interesting story that, of course, made people even more interested in her, of course, and they loved her.
I don't remember that.
She was the first one, the first woman in rock and roll, right? I mean, really,
Yes, yeah.
broke some limits and
Broke some
grounds
barriers,
and-
yeah.
yeah.
Because we played to the first integrated audience in South Africa.
Yes. In the late 70s.
Yeah, 70, oh gosh, 79 I think it was.
When she was solo at that time.
Yes, her solo career, yeah.
And you booked all of the solo shows up to the
No, I did all of the solo TV shows when she first left Ike, and then when we did the tours, then we had a booking agency, and you know, it was a whole bigger setup then.
Yeah. How was it like for Tina to work with Cher? We often hear about that they're
great.
very good friends, but
Yeah.
they kind of had this similar stories. What was she like?
Oh, she's a sweetheart. She's great. She's just a lot of fun. She says what she thinks, and just got a great sense of humor and just very down to earth.
Right.
Yeah, she's a great entertainer. She has an amazing show.
Yeah. Yes. You also speak your mind, don't you? You kind of come across a little bit like
Yeah.
that.
You know, I mean, at the right time at the right place, you know. It's a time and place for everything.
Yeah. Are you also able to speak your mind to Tina?
Oh, sure. I mean, we're family, you know. Yeah.
Right.
We both speak our minds.
And you were her bridesmaid when she
Maid
got
of honor,
married.
yes.
Maid of honor
Yeah.
when she got that it looked amazing that
was a beautiful wedding. Just absolute. I mean, everybody that was there that had been to a lot of big weddings and everything were still amazed and shocked at that, because the floral, Tina did the whole thing herself, the arrangements. And all the floral design was done by Jeff Latham. And it was just, there was a whole wall of red roses that went from the house out to the lake, because their house sits on the lake. And flowers in front. I mean, it was truck after truck after truck, refrigerator trucks full of flowers from Amsterdam.
Wow.
It's amazing.
She
amazing.
really had a dream wedding, because the
Yes.
first one with Ike was
Well, that was in Mexico. That was
yeah.
signing a paper, and that was it. No, this was all, it's what she wanted, and you know, as far as the decorations and the way it was done, and it's amazing.
How do you think the music business has changed over the years compared to the past? I mean, when you see some of the young performers today, it seemed like in the past, like Tina was so unusual and such a personality. Today it seems more like everybody's in a box.
In a box, yeah.
It's like,
Well, it's a total different thing. You don't have all the competition, so to speak, of different record companies, because there used to be a lot of record companies, small ones, big ones. You know, you had a variety. Now there's like the major companies have bought out all the small companies or driven the small companies out of business. So there's not that much to choose from if you're trying to find a record label, and they're more strict because there's so much piracy going on, and so much with, you know, things being sold online and the internet and all that. It's a total different ball game, and it's
But
It kind of
people
takes the
don't-
fun out of
It doesn't
it.
seem so real anymore in the same
No, it's,
same
well,
sense.
and everything is not mechanical, but synthesized and just, you don't hear the raw, gutsy, like live performances in a sense. Everything's been digitalized and changed and this and that and the other, and it's
Yeah.
not the same. But, life isn't
What
the
does
same.
Tina think about the music world today?
We never really talked about it that much. I mean, there's a lot of, like Adele is amazing. There's a few acts that's really, that's very talented and holding their own. To me, some of the acts just happen to be at the right place at the right time, where they're not really as talented as other acts,
Right.
but they're doing quite well. And the money that these acts make nowadays is just mind-boggling.
Yeah. But it's not so much about talent, is it? It's more about
Not anymore. It's being in the right place at the right time. Have a manager that gets you out there and gets you a record deal, and stays on top of them with a promotion to get the record sold and all that. It's a different ballgame.
Tina's really made a lot of albums. Which one or which songs are your favorite?
I Can't Stand the Rain.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's your number one.
Yeah, there's a couple of them, but that one always stands out because every time I think about that, I picture her sitting on stage on a stool, stomping her foot with boots on and a black skirt and top. It was just a very gutsy.
So it's the live version that you
Yeah.
you prefer, really.
Yeah,
So that's number one, or yeah.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Would she record any? You talk about being retired, but of course, all the fans would want her to, even if she doesn't go on tour and doesn't have to promote the album in every country and every television show. Cher did like a one-off called Not Commercial. Maybe would Tina record something just record an album, a Tina album?
I doubt it. She's retired. She's done all of that. It's time for her to have some
She's not interested.
her time, so to
Yeah.
speak,
She doesn't.
versus me time. Well, yeah, she's worked a lot, and it takes a lot out of you. You've got to rehearse. You've got to get a band together. You've got to get the songs together. And you do have to do some promotion. A record company is not going to put an album out without some kind of promotion behind it. So it's not just a matter of recording it and you're through.
Yeah, and you can't
So-
just do it yourself. But the Beyond albums, which she's done, the spiritual albums,
Right.
that she's doing these in recent years, is promoted by someone else.
Yes,
but
it
she
is.
has-
Beyond Regular Corti, which it was her project, is the one that's promoting that, and all of Tina's, royalties and what have you is donated to the charity, and so it's that would be a different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can't look forward to possibly her recording something.
Don't count on it.
Don't count on it.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Rhonda.
You're
It's
welcome,
been
Lucas.
absolutely wonderful having
Thank
this
you.
interview with you.
Thank you
It's
for
great
interviewing me. Enjoyed it.
Thank
Take
you
care.
so much.
All the best.
Come on, girls. That's it. That's my girl.
Backstage.